these are the key ingredients when we look at radicalization. We look at an identity crisis, a sense of a grievance, whether real or perceived, that leads a young, angry teenager to seek out a subculture. And I want to finish this point just by saying one last thing. These are not excuses. And one of the reasons why I'm doing the work I'm doing now is because I feel responsible for everything I did after that. So I'm not making excuses. What I'm looking to do is analyze some of the factors that lead to somebody being susceptible to adopting extremist ideas.
Just quickly, you say you didn't feel particularly Muslim. I mean, had you been fasting during Ramadan? Did you pray 5 times a day? Did you pray at all?
No.
No to all of the above.
Yeah. And that's common, by the way, for people, young Muslim men especially, who join Islamist extremist groups. And when I say Islamist, I mean those groups that seek to impose one version of Islam as state law. It's common that they come from an irreligious background. It's common that they come from, on average, and this is statistically demonstrated, they come from an educated background, which is above the average levels of university education. They come from a liberal background, and they experience, first of all, a political conversion, and then they have to, I suppose as an afterthought, become a bit more pious. But actually, primarily, it's a political conversion.
At the time you became, as you say, an extremist, 16 was what we're talking about. Had you, in fact, read the Quran?
No.
No?
No, never.
So you became a Muslim extremist without ever having read the Quran?
Again, that's a very common thing. That's right. So because they don't have religious backgrounds. I mean, they are people who essentially have a sense of political grievance, and then the political narrative is built on top of that, and Islam is used to justify essentially what are political positions.
So you joined this organization.
Yeah.
What was the organization?
It's called Hizb ut-Tahrir.
And what does that mean?
The Liberation Party.
And what does it represent? Is it a jihadi organization? Is it about blowing up World Trade Centers, or is it about something else?
So the group is still legal in the West, including in the States, in the UK. What they believe in is all of the ideas of Al-Qaeda without the methodology, without the terrorism. So essentially the idea of forcibly unifying Muslim majority nations under one global caliphate that implements an interpretation, a single unitary interpretation of Islam as state law, and then an expansionist foreign policy. So that state will then intend and aim on conquest. They believe in obliterating Israel, for example, through a foreign policy that they call jihad. It's a cynical use of the term. They've pretty much monopolized that term these days. But so it's the political side of what Al-Qaeda believes in without the terrorism. So then you may ask, how do they intend to get to that stage without terrorism? And that's what we did. We recruited officers from armies, specifically the Pakistani army, and we were agitators for military coups. In 2003, Musharraf discovered a cell in the Pakistani army that I was partly responsible for recruiting. We found them in Sandhurst, a military academy in London. They were cadets that were sent there for training, and we recruited them to Hizb ut-Tahrir. And just in fact...
Must be pretty ripe ground to begin with in the Pakistani
Yeah,
army.
well, of course, General Zia began a lot of this for us, so it made it very easy for us to do. Just a few months ago, they discovered another officer, in fact, a 2-star general in the Pakistani army who was a member of the group that I helped set up in 4 different countries, Brigadier Ali Khan.
You were just spreading goodwill wherever you went.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually, in fact, you were arrested.
In Egypt.
You were taking these ideas to different countries, and this organization to different countries. You get to Egypt, and what happens?
So I think it's really important to mention something here, and that's that the age group of people that are doing this, because it's lethal, these are young kids. I was 16 when I joined, and by the time I'd set this up and recruited army officers in Pakistan and set up a Danish-Pakistani chapter in Denmark, was on the leadership in the UK, and then ended up becoming responsible for reviving the group in Egypt, by the time of my arrest, I was only 24 years old.
Well, the sense of power and of empowerment must be enormous for a young man under those circumstances.
And that's why I'm making this point, that you've got 60% of countries such as Pakistan or Iran, we were talking about Egypt, Yemen, 60 to 50% of these countries' populations are currently under the age of 20, 22, 18 in Yemen's case. It's a huge youth bulge, and these are young people that have nothing else to do because the economy is so bad, and they want a sense of empowerment. They feel emasculated. And in my case, this gave me a sense of fighting back against the system, against colonialism, sticking two fingers up to society and saying, I'm going to make my own world, and I'm going to make up my own rules.